Welcome to the first episode of Diamond Reads. I made an announcement a few days ago where I said I would be narrating creepypastas, and now this is it. Today is the day I'm finally going to do it. So yeah, I'm gonna kick off the first episode with a very special start. My first creepypasta is from the Shadow Lioness. It is basically about the 1998 version of Tarzan. I love Disney. It's everything that could ever be so popular as it is today. I have been in love with anything related to Disney ever since I started watching them as a kid. From the day Disney started to the movies we have today. Although one of my all-time favorites of all Disney movies was Tarzan. Tarzan was a Disney movie that was made in 1999, and I was at least 9 years old when that movie came out. I remember watching that movie from the theaters to watching it on VHS to DVD, because nowadays DVDs are what we have today. Although I have discovered a more dark version of this movie back in 2016, I wish I could see it again to compare this version to what I saw with the Tarzan Disney movie we got today. In case you don't know what Tarzan is, then let me fill you out. Tarzan was based on a novel series by Edgar Rice Burroughs. He wrote an entire series of 24 books, but now I have never read them. But I was so into his work of books that I just recently started to read the novels. And they're a lot darker than the Disney Tarzan movie we got today from Disney. And now on to the event that happened to me that made me look at the Tarzan movie differently. It all started in May 2015, where I got a job at Best Buy during the summer, where phones, tablets, computers, etc. were all sold along with extra stuff for those kinds of electronics. However, we sometimes have some movies every once in a while come in the store, but mostly video games and game consoles. I wanted to work at Best Buy because my sister, who used to go there in her teens, would buy me movies whenever they had them, and video games. Now that she is 32 years old, she used to work at Best Buy when I was in high school, nearly my graduating year. But she ended up quitting her job for financial reasons. After I worked at Best Buy for a couple of months, it was April of 2016, and I was really busy with my job. It was so tiring when my shift ended, and I never had the energy to do the things I like to do, and even the things I want to do. Once in a while, I would sit on my couch to relax and watch a Disney movie, and that was the day I finally did so. It was a Friday on that day, and I was having a stressful day at work. Despite customers being pushy and rude here and there, that I had to put up with. Luckily for me, it was my break time, so I drove out of the Best Buy plaza and went to a restaurant. It was not far from where the plaza was for lunch. I walked inside Taco Bell for lunch, and it wasn't so busy inside, surprisingly. I ordered my food and waited. Standing next to me was a guy. He seemed to be around my age. He looked at me, and I gave him a smile through my stressful thoughts going on in my head. "Having a stressful day?" he asked me as I turned my head to face him. "Yeah, Best Buy can be filled with assholes that are pushy and rude." He replied with, "We started a conversation when I finally got to see that he was from Best Buy." "Do you work at Best Buy?" I asked him, seeing that he has a Best Buy worker shirt on with the name John on it. "Yeah, I am new here. I started working last month. I have seen you in Best Buy and I think you're awesome at what you do," John replied as his food was ready at the same time as mine. We grabbed our food and he offered me to have lunch with him, which I said yes to that. As we were eating our lunch, we talked about what we both liked and disliked, and when I mentioned Disney movies, we talked in more detail about those movies. When I said to John about Tarzan being one of my favorite Disney movies, I explained to him I couldn't find it on DVD anywhere. I tried ordering one online, but the DVD didn't work. "Have you ever bought a movie from Google Play?" John then asked me. I haven't bought a movie from Google Play before because I use iTunes for that. And I tried looking for the Tarzan movie there, but I couldn't seem to purchase it because my old iPhone was very old and it didn't work much anymore. Luckily, I got a new phone for Christmas. I replied to John, who looked at his Samsung, which I had the same phone as he did with the cover on the back of my phone. "You should be able to get it on Google Play without a problem," And if you do, you can contact me at Best Buy, and I can figure the problem out, John said as I finished my lunch and smiled at him before leaving the restaurant to go back to my car and head back to work. I smiled at John and thanked him before I left the restaurant. When I got home from work, my fiance was working late on a night shift, so I went to my phone and went to the Google Play app. I searched up the Disney movie Tarzan and I got a few results. The one I saw was a Tarzan movie that said Tarzan 1998. I was confused. Wait a minute. It took me a second to realize that something was off. Tarzan came out in 1999, not 1998. I then did some research and it said that the production of Disney's Tarzan was made sometime between 1997 and 1998 and then released in 1999. Maybe it was a pre-made version of it. I was still confused, but then I decided to look at the ratings of this weird 1998 version of Tarzan, and there were only 2 reviews with the ratings of the movie being 1 out of 5 stars. I looked through the comments of the movies. Yeah, I looked through the comments of the movie, and one of them saying it was way too violent for children. Another review said it was more of a darker tone to it than the 1999 version, even though the movie was dark anyway, but at least it was semi-kid friendly, or at least kid friendly mostly. I thought this movie was pre-made in 1998, and I was lucky enough to see it as the other 2 people that reviewed the movie did. So I took a look at the cover. To my surprise, it was a special edition cover. It had Tarzan on the front with Turk, Jane, Tantor, Kala, and everything else that was on the cover. So I purchased the movie on Google Play. I waited for a few moments when I went to play the movie from my phone. I plugged in my earbuds and I sat on my couch with my phone in hand and started watching the movie. To my surprise, the most of the intro played normally. But when it comes to Kala and Kerchak waking up to Sabor, who was chasing their baby, the scene went a little out of place. It seemed longer than I thought. It showed the baby gorilla being killed by Sabor by having him sink his teeth into the baby gorilla. I thought there was going to be blood and guts, but thankfully there was no blood or guts. The screen then cuts to Kerchak and Kala heartbroken by the sight of their baby being killed. So far, the 1998 version of the movie was dark, but I knew the 1999 version of Tarzan was dark anyway, but at least it was semi-kid friendly. I didn't expect Disney to go that dark. Maybe since this was a pre-made version of the movie, it didn't make it to the final project due to the violence that is in the movie. The scene where Kala saves baby Tarzan and being rescued by Sabor was all normal. No change whatsoever at the thought that this movie was untouched in certain parts. However, when I got to the part where Kerchak and Kala were talking about baby Tarzan, things started to get fucked. Kala, I cannot let you put our family in danger, Kerchak said to his mate. It was a scene where Kerchak wants Kala to take baby Tarzan back, but Kala refused. Does he look dangerous to you? Kala asked as Kerchak then got really pissed off and roared at Kala, making baby Tarzan cry. He was at the stance where he wanted to hit his mate. I was getting scared. I thought Kerchak was going to abuse his mate, but he didn't. Then he finally gave in. He can stay, Kerchak said to his wife, but that doesn't make him my son. When the scene cuts to Tarzan as a child, he was hanging around Turk, who was an ape friend to him. He dares Tarzan to get the elephant hair, which is where things started to get even more messed up. From here on, I was more scared than anything at this point when the elephants were freaking out when they thought Tarzan was a piranha. Turk and his friends just stared at the scene for a few seconds as the elephants started the stampede, and surprisingly enough, it was a little graphic through this scene where the other gorillas were in the jungle. At first, the gorillas didn't know what was going on until the elephants charged through the jungle. Everyone got out of the way just in time. At first, everyone thought that everyone was out of the way of the stampede, but one of the baby gorillas was trampled to death by the elephants crushing it. I closed my eyes at this point. I can't have a look at what was bound to happen. I can hear the baby gorillas cry as the elephants were crushing it. As the scene was over, Kerchak looked in horror along with the other gorillas at the sight of the dead body of the dead baby gorilla. I could see that Kerchak was sad but angry at the same time. All the other gorillas mourned over the loss of a dead baby gorilla that didn't have the chance to live a good life. The next scene cuts to Turk and Tantor, who thought that Tarzan had died, drowning while being trampled by the elephants when he coughed, "He's alive," Turk said while hugging her friend. Tarzan showed Turk that he got the elephant hair. "I don't believe it. You got the hair?" Turk was surprised that Tarzan did the dare without dying. Tantor was explaining that he has lots of hair when Kerchak's booming voice was heard. "What happened?" Kerchak said with anger. Turk and Tantor stepped back as Tarzan walked up slowly to an angry Kerchak. He explained that he was just playing with Turk and her friends. Tarzan then tried to apologize when Kerchak snapped, "You killed someone!" His voice boomed with rage. "But it was an accident," Tarzan replied. He was scared by the fact that Kerchak's yelling and anger were really scaring him. He didn't mean to kill someone, but Kala got to Tarzan's side to defend him from the angry Kerchak. "He's only a child," Kala said to Kerchak in Tarzan's defense. "That's no excuse, Kala. You can't keep defending him like that." Kerchak growled at his mate. "He'll learn." Kala was then cut off by Kerchak's ranting. "He'll never learn. He can't learn to be one of us," Kerchak snarled. "That's because you never give him a chance," Kala replied with her voice now sounding more firm. "Give him a chance?" Kerchak asked. He didn't care what Kala had to say about Tarzan only being a kid, even if he isn't a gorilla. Kala looked at him. "He will never be one of us." "Kerchak," Kala said to him, as Tarzan, who felt hurt by the words Kerchak said about him, made him run off away from his adoptive mother and Kerchak. The film went nice and smoothly from the scenes showing Tarzan growing up as an adult, and even the song "Son of Man," sung by Phil Collins, was in great quality, as I loved hearing the songs by him. Then we get to see Tarzan fighting Sabor successfully. Tarzan kills Sabor to get trust from Kerchak, but however, the silverback still didn't trust Tarzan, even if he killed the jaguar that was a threat to the tribe. Then the next scene where Tarzan spots Clayton with Professor Porter and his daughter Jane. That's when shit hit the fan. Jane goes off when a baby baboon stole her sketchbook, so she tries to get it back. But the scene went very different after this line was said by Jane. "Come on now, enough of this. I want this paper on the count of 3. 1, 2. Oh, look, bananas." Jane made the baby baboon look as Jane snatched the paper with one of her drawings. She was then greeted by a whole bunch of baboons chasing Jane. Tarzan sees what was going on, so he swings on a vine so he can save her, as he grabs her by the time she was close to a dead end. The baboon chase went on a bit longer than expected, when Tarzan saves Jane from being mauled by the baboons. They started to attack each other. That is creepy. Why would they attack each other when they're supposed to attack Jane? Well, I don't know. So anyway, Tarzan got to a tree where he and Jane would be safe after the chase ended. Tarzan started to get close to Jane, only curious about what Jane is. When he took her glove off, he soon realized that Jane is a human, and that would mean he is one too. But Tarzan, who can't speak English, listened to Jane saying, "It's very nice." Tarzan repeated what Jane said. She looked surprised when Tarzan talked to her. He stopped Jane from talking and used his ape language that he learned from the gorillas. "Tarzan," he said. But at first Jane didn't quite understand Tarzan. Tarzan repeated his name again, and soon Jane got the idea. Tarzan is his name. "Oh, I see," Jane replied. Then Tarzan repeated what Jane said. No. I'm Jane." Jane introduced herself to Tarzan. No. I'm Jane," Tarzan replied, even though he only repeated stuff in English only when Jane spoke to him. No. Jane stopped Tarzan for a minute so she can show Tarzan the better way to introduce herself to Tarzan. "Jane, Tarzan, Jane." Jane replied as Tarzan repeated Jane's name when a gunshot from Clayton echoed through the jungle. Jane then asked Tarzan if he could take her to her camp, which Tarzan agrees. He picks up Jane and swings through the jungle to take her to her camp. After Tarzan's animal friends trash Jane's camp, Tarzan and Jane get to the camp. Jane was in a look of surprise. She saw gorillas. Gorillas, she said in amazement as Tarzan was playing with Turk and talking like a gorilla. He's one of them? Jane was surprised to see that Tarzan was raised by gorillas. When Kerchak showed up, everyone left as soon as Clayton and Professor Porter walked into the camp to see that Jane was unharmed. She went on telling her father and Clayton on about how she was chased by baboons and about Tarzan saving her. The next scene cuts to Kerchak warning the tribe about the humans that are strangers to them, but Tarzan argues a bit with Kerchak about the strangers that he met and that they couldn't hurt them. But Kerchak, being overprotective, looked at Tarzan with a stern look. Protect this family and stay away from them. Tarzan, who felt like he was being treated like some soldiers who didn't want to listen to Kerchak. Even Kala told Tarzan to do it for once. When Tarzan showed up back at the camp to see Jane the next day, he met her father, Professor Porter, and Clayton, whom they hired for protection. Jane introduced Tarzan to her father and Clayton, which Tarzan only said a few words in English. When Clayton asked Tarzan to take him along with Jane and her father to see the gorillas, Tarzan couldn't speak English, so Jane suggested to teach him their language. As the next scene went on about Tarzan's new friends teaching him the life of what humans do, he learned a lot from Jane and Clayton the most, but mostly Jane. The song Strangers Like Me was being played throughout the whole scene, which I enjoyed that song since it was one of my favorites of the movie. When Tarzan grabbed a handful of flowers he was planning on giving them to Jane, when he saw the commotion going on, people were moving crates and stuff another. Tarzan soon bumped into Jane, which she looked at Tarzan. Tarzan, I was wondering if you would come with us to England. Jane asked Tarzan what Tarzan was hoping they were just visiting and coming back home to Africa tomorrow. But Jane tells Tarzan that she will not be coming back. So Tarzan kept telling Jane to stay, but she keeps telling him that she can't stay. After telling Tarzan so many times that she can't stay, she runs off from the scene, crying. Clayton talks to Tarzan about taking him along with Jane and her father to see the gorillas. At first, Tarzan didn't want to do what Clayton asked him, but he finally gave in and made an idea for his human friends to see the gorillas. Tarzan disguised Turk and Tantor as Jane and Professor Porter to lure Kerchak away from the nest of gorillas, which worked for a while when Tarzan took his friends to see the gorillas, including his mom Kala. Kerchak finds out later that Tarzan betrayed him and his family. Kala then took Tarzan to the treehouse where she found him as a baby. Tarzan looked at a photo of his mother and father. He soon realized he was a human, so Tarzan decided to leave off with Jane the next day so he can be with humans like him. He said goodbye to Kala that night, which made me sad. I knew what it was like to leave someone that you loved behind, even if I had reasons to do so. When the scene transitions to the boat where Jane with her father and Tarzan climbed on board, it was a trap. Clayton had planned on capturing the gorillas to sell them. Tarzan shouts loudly at Clayton as Tantor and Turk found a way to swim to the boat to save Tarzan and his friends. The movie went as smoothly as it can be until when the scene shows Clayton and his men attacking the gorillas, and even Kerchak was trying to protect his tribe. Tarzan along with his friends showed up to confront Clayton. However, this scene was a lot more dark than the Disney movie from 1999 we have. When Clayton shot Tarzan, a loud gunshot rang loudly through my earbuds. Shit, that scared the shit out of me. I turned the volume of my phone down so I could still hear the movie. When Kerchak roared in anger as he ran towards Clayton to attack him, another gunshot rang. At least it wasn't as loud as the first one was. The fight between Tarzan and Clayton went just as well as the original movie, until it gets to the part where Clayton cuts through the vines to get to Tarzan, when he accidentally hangs himself. The camera then pans out more to focus on the shadow of Clayton's dead body in the shadows. Usually, I knew that was disturbing, but other than that, I was fine with that since I've seen the original movie so many times. Tarzan is now seen with a dying Kerchak. The gunshot wound was shown on the silverback. The wound was a huge gash and it was a bit too graphic. Too graphic that I felt a little sick to my stomach, but I ignored it and continued to watch the movie. Kerchak weakly looks at Tarzan with his last moments with him and everyone else in the jungle. His breath was raspy as Tarzan got close to Kerchak. Tarzan, Kerchak said weakly. Kerchak, forgive me, Tarzan said to his dying tribe leader. No, Kerchak replied weakly. Forgive me for not understanding that you've always been one of us. Our family will look up to you now. Knowing how much this is tearing me up, I started to cry a little too. I lost my grandfather when I was 18 years old, and this reminds me of the tragedy that I faced. No, Kerchak, Tarzan replied sadly. Take care of them, Kerchak pleaded. My son. Tarzan held Kerchak's hand for the silverback's last dying breath. Take care of them. Kerchak dies due to the wound being too much for an old silverback to handle. Tarzan then becomes the leader of the tribe, and the scene then cuts to Jane and her father leaving on a lifeboat to the ship. Jane, who felt heartbroken, looked back at Tarzan on the beach. She felt her heart really belonged to him. So her father said to join Tarzan in the jungle and stay. So Jane did, and so the happy ending was the same as the movie that I know. After the end credits, I was just speechless. I knew the movie was dark, but this version was a tad bit darker than the one that I know a lot from the original film. It was late at night by the time the movie finished, so I plugged in my phone in the charger and went to bed that night. The next day, I was getting ready for work when I just remembered the Tarzan movie from 1998 I saw. I was a little freaked out about some of the scenes that were graphic for kids. So that might be why Tarzan didn't come out in 1998. It would have scared kids if it did have those graphic parts and stuff like that. When I got to Best Buy, the worker John wasn't there, so I wondered to myself what could have happened to him. Soon later on my shift, my boss told me that John had left his job for unknown reasons, and no one knows why. I didn't know why he left either. After my shift at work was over, I decided to watch the 1998 version of Tarzan again on Google Play. So I got home and went on my phone to look up the 1998 version of the Tarzan movie, but I couldn't find it. All I found was the original movie of it, along with other Disney movies. I tried looking for it everywhere, but I had no luck on finding it. So then I finally decided to look on recent purchases, but couldn't find it there either. So then I wondered, did Google Play take that movie down? Well, if they did, they would have done it for many reasons to begin with, but I still tend to hunt for it. But I still can't find it. Maybe if I ever come across the 1998 version of Tarzan someday, I hope I can see it again and one day show it to my sister now that it's 2019. I am still on the hunt for it, but still can't find it. I tried everything, but I still can't find a 1998 movie of Tarzan. If I ever were to find it again, I will let you all know. And that's the end. Okay, here's my review. I'm honestly in shock. I'm actually surprised that something like this would happen in any version of a Disney movie for that matter. I mean, sure, I know Disney is an evil corporation, what with the fact that with their business practices and the fact that they fucked up 20th Century Fox and all their assets, but this one really takes the fucking cake. I really don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I mean, I'm almost getting desensitized from this. I'm almost getting a slight feeling of discomfort from it. Like, I really don't know what to say, except this is some of the most surreal shit I've ever read. You know, this may be the first time I've ever read a creepypasta, but this is some pretty dark shit. I'm actually enjoying this. I actually enjoyed this, but I'm actually surprised about the parts where people were well, you know, they were getting shot. I'm actually, some parts in this I was actually getting surprised about it. I don't even know how that happened or why that happened for that matter, but it did. It did. Yeah. So yeah, lots of weird shit happening there, and I can't even begin to process. And right now I feel like I just need a minute to process what the fuck I just read. But it was still a good story nonetheless. So basically, it was dark and creepy and spooky and suspenseful, but that still doesn't erase the fact that it was an amazing story. almost struck a chord with me a little bit. The Shadow Lioness, if you were trying to pull on my heartstrings, it worked. You succeeded. It really fucking worked. If that's what you were trying to do, then congratulations. Mission accomplished, because it worked. It really worked. Thanks to you, thanks to your request, this is having a major impact on me, and I like that. I honestly like what I just read. So basically, guys, keep your requests coming. That was the first episode of Diamond Reads. If you guys have any other requests for creepypastas for me to read, please let me know, because I will be reading them. Also, if you want to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And because you will be seeing notifications for my wrestling streams, my Sparta remixes, and other things I do, because I make new content almost every single day. I'm your boy Diamond Rebel Spartan Zero, and I will see you next time.